You know, a quarter of a century ago, the Canadian writer Marshall McLuhan, who was an expert on advertising, uh, said something. He said the police state has now become a work of art. And I believe that's true. What does it mean to be a work of art? It means to be constructed in such a way as to grab hold of someone's imagination, but it also means to be a complete. You know, it's like a maze, but yet this labyrinth has now become complete, and people are entrapped in it. And certainly we've seen an escalation of this. And it's interesting to me that the people, I call them the Illuminati, the conspirators, have grasped upon an incredible method, the Hegelian dialectic.
What is that?
Well, the Hegelian dialectic is basically to control both sides. You control both sides. For example, the Republicans and Democrats, they sort of become the Republicrats. No matter what you get, we're going to have an incredible invasion of illegal aliens. You say, well, I'll vote for the Republicans, but it doesn't matter. We're still going to get recessions and depressions and economic bankruptcies and corruption at the top. And Bill Clinton took as much in payola from the corporations as does George W. Bush.
So this whole left-right paradigm is truly an illusion.
That's right. One of the things that we need to tell people is very important. Don't get trapped in these labels. You know, right wing, left wing, or whatever. I don't see a patriotic person. I may have Christian differences, okay? But that's a spiritual matter. We can take that. That is really the primary concern for me, but not for everyone. And I realize that. I live in a country of freedom, and I'm not going to try to, stuff my religion down anybody. So if we look at it simply as America and the political freedoms that we cherish, then what we have to understand is we've been divided, and they want to keep dividing us. The more that we're frightened and divided, the more that they bring up divisiveness, the more they're going to win. If we realize that in terms of the Bill of Rights, it doesn't matter whether you're a so-called far-left liberal or a right-wing extremist, so-called. In fact, it's interesting that the Bush administration has targeted both groups, I believe, now.
We have Republicans becoming Democrats and Democrats becoming Republicans or voting for the war. It's a strange time.
It is indeed. And I'm willing to work with anybody in terms of patriotism. Now, again, we may have religious differences that divide us. But what has free speech got to do with that? If you see what I'm saying. A person, I'm pro-life. Maybe you're pro-choice. But I want to give you the right to state your beliefs. I want you to have every, constitutional right. I'm not a Buddhist. I'm a Christian. I'm not fearful of Buddhists opening up a temple somewhere and going out to preach to people. Okay? Because I believe in the power of my God.
So there's no point in killing in the name of religion.
No.
Because, back to the Illuminati, well, they say that was the devil's biggest trick, convincing us he didn't exist.
One of the things that's quite interesting, and we have a lot of documentation to prove this, Alex, is that in 1871, Albert Pike, who was the sovereign grand commander of International Freemasonry, the Scottish Rite, with his, let's just say, collaborator over in Europe, Giuseppe Mazzini, of the Grand Orient Lodge there, met. And evidently they formulated a plan for 3 great world wars. And this was in 1871. And with each war, it would come closer to that utopia that they have envisioned for us, okay? When men will be enslaved and the wise only will rule over us, the philosopher kings, and that's what they think they are, the illumined ones. But the 3rd Great War, and this is quite interesting. Now remember, all the way back to 1871, these writings go. The 3rd Great War, World War III, they said will culminate in an incredible catastrophe focused in the Middle East. And it will be a war in which the 3 monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, attack each other, exhaust each other, destroy each other, you see, and then will come the new world religion. some type of a conglomerate that really is a worship of Lucifer.
Or the New World Order, or this
The New World
utopia.
Order,
So let's
absolutely.
talk a little bit about...
But let me just state this.
Okay.
The interesting thing is, hasn't that master plan come to fruition? Haven't we seen 2 world wars, and now America's in the Middle East? You know, whatever is your political persuasion, you have to understand we're there, and there is a master plan, and that's why we're in Iraq. There were no weapons of mass destruction and all of these silly things, but there is a plan, and I believe they're using the United States to further their plan, and we have become the imperialistic proxy for the Illuminati. A lot of people look at us and say, well, you're conspiracy theorists. Well, we're not at all. It's a fact that George Bush Sr. himself frequently spoke of the New World Order. In a speech to the United Nations, he said, our goal is a New World Order. This is not unusual, of course. You know, Adolf Hitler, one of his books is entitled The New Order. In the New Age movement, in the occult world, they have long talked about a New World Order. It is a gathering of all of the nations as one. A really ironclad type of United Nations. The United Nations is just the embryo. It's just a skeleton. It has no real powers, but it is something that they have used sort of as a hook or like a hat rack. They keep adding on with different treaties and giving it more powers. Now, of course, they want to have the power of taxation. And once you have the power to tax, take people's money, then you have the power to take their property. And so finally, everything ends up in the hands of the elite. This is the New World Order. This is their plan. My belief, very strongly, is it's prophesied to occur this way. And there are certain forces that are involved in this. And I believe strongly that there are racial and religious groups that have been, let's just use an old Texas term, snookered. They have been deceived into joining in this. And the reason why, and one of the things that I did, I looked at your biography and what they're saying about you in Portland, Alex. And I noticed that one of your goals, now correct me if I'm wrong, one of your goals ostensibly is to end the divisions in the community, to bring people together. I believe strongly in that. So if you have Jews, for example, who say they're a superior race, and that the Gentiles are the Goyim, okay? And if they have a holy book written by stupid, evil men that say this, then I'm opposed to that. If we have, on the other hand, Germans or Muslims or any others that say that their flesh is superior, they are a better breed of men, or that by some method of philosophy they can exalt themselves as a lumen and the rest of us are just peons, useless eaters. Those are dangerous doctrines, dangerous theologies. So, you know, I'm for bringing people together, whether it's Jews, whether it's Americans, and I say Jews, I mean Israelis, because there are many Jews in America. But I believe anytime you foster this is a division. And we have a nation in America where they're trying to divide the blacks from the whites, from the Native American Indians. And we once had a melting pot, but now it's, you know, just a burning pit. You might say a cauldron. And it's totally different than what it used to be.
And these groups that run the media, the umbrella that pretty much controls ABC, CBS, NBC, do that to us every single day, and we see it with Katrina, for example, and how they've approached that.
Yeah, it appears to me there is some reality to the fact that the black people there, the poorest, were left to fend for themselves. It was a horrible sight. And I think Bush was outed at that particular event in a big, big way. I'm not so sure that Clinton could have done any better, but it was during Bush's watch, and he deserves all of the blame. He says he's responsible, by the way, for that. But what does that mean? Isn't that sort of empty? Janet Reno said, you know, the buck stops here. I take the blame for what happened at Waco. She didn't resign. She wasn't punished. If she took the blame for the murder of 87 innocent men and women at Waco, she should have been convicted, indicted, arraigned, convicted of murder, and she should be awaiting her execution by lethal injection you know, in the death house. So for Bush to say, I take full responsibility, he is a liar. He doesn't take anything. If he took full responsibility, he'd resign just like Richard Nixon did.
Without getting too deeply into the Bible, I have to say one thing I've noticed, and many Christians that I know are very upset right now with some of the terminology that Bush is using, that the rest of Christians that are supporting the war aren't paying attention to. An angel in the whirlwind, and many other messages that he gives to us in code that I and many others believe are satanic messages to people in on the know around the world that are part of these organizations. Different fragmented groups of the secret societies that work together, known as the modern Illuminati. Skull and Bones, Trilateral Commission, etc., etc. Let's talk a little bit about, one of the modern manifestations, Skull and Bones.
Well, that is a very good example, the Skull and Bones Society, or the actually Order of Skull and Bones, Alex, because here we see a group that has no favorite in political party. And thus we have John Kerry and George Bush running for office, and both of them are members of Skull and Bones. So you see there that the Illuminati, the conspirators, don't go by labels at all. They simply go by money and power and by evil doing on their part. But you know, you're right about the hidden language, coded words. And I believe they use hand signs too. Hand signs as charms to invoke various deities and such.
Right. Hook 'em horns.
Well, hook 'em horns, yeah. It's interesting, you know, that of course the press tried to defend Bush and Jenna and even Barbara Bush. You know, his mother got in on the act. I don't see what University of Texas has to do with her, but and Laura has even been cited giving the horn sign. Now I think it's something deeper there, and it's not only the horn sign. I think there's many more signs. In fact, that's my next book coming out, 1st of November. It's already at the press now, called Codex Magic, or the Magic Codes. Talks about the Illuminati's magical, black magic system of giving hand signs and such. Based on what we've seen, the history that these men have and what they have done in fomenting wars and revolutions and death. I have a different opinion than some people. Some people see their goal as simply power. You know, they want, they're corrupt men who want more money and more power. And certainly that is a goal. You know, even the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. And if that is true, and it has to be true, then that would be a major factor, or the major factor. But I believe there's something more here. I attribute a more diabolical purpose to these men. I believe once you have enough money, you're way past your needs, okay? You're way past the luxury level. When you're to the Bush or Kennedys or Rothschilds or some of these other dynasties, DuPont, Bronfman, and the others, Habsburgs, when you're up in that level, then money is really of no concern to you, even the gathering of more and more. I think then blood comes into play. Now this is a very heinous concept, but there is no doubt in my mind, and I want to tell you something I've never told anybody. There is no doubt in my mind that the Bible is very clear. God says in Isaiah, all those who hate me love death. They are death lovers. They are obsessed with death. I call them the widow makers.
The bonesmen.
The bonesmen, yeah, they are. Well, you go in the tomb in New Haven, Connecticut there. First of all, you notice that the tomb, which is the headquarters of the Skull and Bones, the 15 upperclassmen that are chosen each year, you'll notice that it's in proximity. It's next to, it's really part of a cemetery. There's the cemetery, and what do they call their headquarters building? The tomb. And when you go in, what is there? But they actually have the bones, I think, of Geronimo.
And they lay in the coffin.
They're good. They lay in a coffin.
They're born again into the new order.
They're born again into the new order, all those things. And Masonry has the same thing in the 3rd degree, the Master Mason, where they use the lion's paw to raise the person from the dead. So they emulate dying and then being resurrected into the new order, even in Freemasonry, another secret society of the Illuminati. But death is very, very powerful here. The skull and bones, the symbol itself. Another thing that is unknown that I haven't seen in any book, although it may be in, I know you've interviewed Mulligan recently, and he published a very interesting book on skull and bones. But I went back into old literature, and I was able to obtain a copy of the plan of New Haven, Connecticut, how it's set out, the street lines.
Wow.
Okay? The original plan for New Haven, Connecticut. I found that it is in the shape of a skull and bones. You've got streets like that, and then you've got a big oval, and then right in the middle of the oval is the cemetery. Okay? Okay, the death's head. New Haven was laid out in the architectural form, whoever did this, of skull and bones. The city itself. So it's not just if anybody tells you, oh, that's just a little fraternity, how is it that New Haven, Connecticut itself was laid out in the form of a skull and bones? And this is back in the late 1700s. Interestingly enough, I read in the book, The Writings of George Washington, a book that I've got in my library, that George Washington made a special trip to New Haven, Connecticut to see the plans.
That's interesting because the layout of Washington, D.C. has other messages encoded.
Has other messages and codes. So isn't it interesting that the city, New Haven, Connecticut, Yale University. I also found something recently. Somebody sent me some pictures, and they didn't know what they were sending, I don't think. But they sent me some pictures of Yale University because they do have the Ordo ab Chao, I believe, in stone over one of the archways. But I was looking at another archway, Alex, and this was the archway that goes into the building of education and sociology on the Yale University campus. And there is the idol Baphomet, chiseled in stone. The goat god idol of the Knights Templar. But he's wearing a suit and tie. Baphomet. And he has the torch, with the flame coming out of his head, the horns, and the whole thing. The androgynous goat god Baphomet that was supposedly worshipped. It's in stone at Yale University, an archway of the Education Sociology building. That's another, by the way, that's another secret that nobody knows. This is a first for your video. I believe there was a tremendous attempt, a planned system, if you will, particularly beginning about in the 1890s to buy up the media. And so it was that any newspaper, for example, the Chicago Tribune did some incredible stories exposing the conspiracy, I think back in the 1920s, and they were bought up. This always happens in the media. And then, of course, if any publication comes out and talks about the conspiracy from a neutral or objective standpoint, I think they will be attacked, and before long, they'll be bought up or closed down. I noticed there was a very popular talk show host in San Antonio, one of the most popular of all time. Alan Freeman may remember him, your photographer. Alan Dale, the Alan Dale Show. Tremendous audience throughout Central Texas. And I'm not saying that he was put off the air because of this, but I know he had me on for a couple programs. We talked about these kinds of things that you and I are discussing, Alex, and bam, he was gone. After 30 years. I've been on radio talk shows where halfway through the program, suddenly, my telephone went dead. And an hour later, the talk show host would call me from his home and say I was fired. In the middle of our program, the station manager came in and said he got a telephone call and said, stop that show immediately. They just put music on or something. They fired the talk show host. That's happened to me on 3 or 4 different occasions.
Well, my friend Clyde Lewis, who hosted a show called Ground Zero, was on for 10 years, and he's out to protect us from them or the corporate government.
Well, our relationships with the police will change because they will be recruiting and bringing in foreign police, and I don't think somebody from Hong Kong or Guadalupe, Mexico, a policeman is going to be able to relate to you very well. Okay, they don't even have the freedoms and all that we have. So there's no doubt that we're going to have a police state, and we're going to have a homogenization of all the foreign police come in to help us out in all these emergencies and such. And I think that'll be standardized, a procedure. As far as the ultimate, when will this occur? I think we're on the verge. What we need, according to the Illuminati, is a couple more, maybe just one even, very crucial, very horrible key event. Another 9/11, but on a grand scale. A grand scale in which 50,000 people are killed with radiation poisoning in such a nuclear accident. And I believe that is very likely to happen. And of course, it will all be engineered by the Israeli Mossad, the CIA, the rogue government, we call it. And but then that will end all of our freedoms. You know, even General Tommy Franks said that in Cigar Aficionado magazine. He said one more 9/11 and the Constitution basically will go out the window. People's fears will drive them to that. They will be more than happy for the protection of the federal government.